Today's guest is Bonny Snowdon, and I have to confess, I was so excited. This was like one of the episodes I was most excited to record. Bonny is somebody who I saw. She is actually in a mastermind that I'm in, but I hadn't spoken to her. I hadn't seen her at any of the events. But she's somebody that I saw and I was like, oh my gosh, what she does is so cool. And I want to introduce her to my audience. She'd be a perfect person to share what she does that sparks her and her story. It's so great that she's a perfect example of somebody who had a passion and it was suppressed. And believe it or not, she had a teacher. She loves to draw when she was a kid, or I think actually in college, because she was taking uh, something to do with her drawing or artistry or whatever in that creative sense. But she was told by a teacher that she wasn't good enough, that her art wasn't good enough. And you should see what she can do. It's like crazy. And isn't that so sad that one person can change the trajectory of our life? And that person did that for her. But thank goodness, because I think our true purpose always comes back to us if we allow it to. And if we go with it. And honestly, I think her life got so bad that it ended up when you get to that point in life, it's like you're desperate to get out of it. And when you find purpose in that place, and maybe if her life had been a little bit better, she wouldn't have found it. But I think the universe takes control and puts you in this bad place that somehow what you're supposed to do comes out of it. And that happened to her. And so she talks about her life. She talks about how she got there. She's in her early 50s. So it was her late 40s when she kind of had this epiphany of what I'm really meant to do, and getting out of a bad marriage that she was in, abusive marriage, emotionally abusive marriage. A lot of times we accept emotional abuse because it's not physical abuse, but it's still abuse, and it still was making her feel like she wasn't enough, just like her teacher told her in college. And so she is shining a big bright light on the world, and in so doing teaching other people how to draw. And it's pretty amazing what she does. And she's from, I think, North Yorkshire. Near York, England. Amazing place. I love York. But near there, she's an award-winning colored pencil artist and an artist mentor specializing in animal portraits. So she has a love of animals like I do too. 3 kids. She's a mom of 3 kids. And she's just a great, lovely human being. And so I want to introduce you to Bonny now. Welcome to another episode of Living Your Spark Second Half. I am very, very excited today to talk to somebody who I've been wanting to talk to for, I know, at least 6 months. This person is somebody who I really didn't meet until just now before I hit record. We were chatting a bit, but she is in this mastermind I'm in, but she and I haven't met in person, and we've just been on these virtual calls, and we don't actually get to interact too much on these calls because we get coached. But she was coached by my coach in one of the sessions, and what she does and how she got started is so perfect for living your sparked second half. And she's just the perfect guest to have. So when I recently reached out to her and she responded yes, I was like, yay. So welcome to the program, Bonny.
Oh gosh, thank you so much. I'm absolutely delighted to be here. Really, really happy to be here.
Yeah. So, well, first of all, Bonny Snowdon, I should say your whole name. And she, as you can tell, she is from the UK. So part of what we were chatting about before I hit record was she lives in an area that I love, close to a town called York. And so I was asking her if I have a couple that live in a close town to there that I visited. And so we were comparing stories. So
Yeah.
yes, that's fun. You live in a
talking
great
about
area.
talking about the tea rooms and
But
everything.
yeah,
Yes, I like a nice cup of tea.
Yes, yes. I love visiting your country. The people are amazing. I just love it. It's just the greatest vibe there.
Yeah, yeah, and particularly Yorkshire, where your friends live. I think we are a very friendly bunch in Yorkshire, definitely.
Hmm.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
I didn't
well,
even
you'd
know
think
it. Yeah, there's a
no.
Harry Potter like train there that was used.
Oh yes, yes, yes. Up at yeah. Oh gosh, that's over near the East Coast. Um, yeah, there's all sorts. We've got all sorts.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyways, well, let's talk about what you do. Why don't you share what you do? And it was something, just to give you a little clue, you listeners, that it was something she loved and she was told she wasn't good at.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Weren't good
So
enough.
I
Yeah.
I I teach people to draw realistic subjects with colored pencils. And as well as teaching people to draw, I also help with mindset and confidence that kind of, it's sort of like a whole package. And I tend to teach people around my sort of age and upwards. So I have much younger students and I have students in their 80s. And it's the most incredible thing, bringing creativity back to an awful lot of people who haven't been creative for many, many years.
And what about
And
people who don't think they're creative?
oh
Like I
gosh,
remember you saying that there was a lot of people who are beginners.
yeah, everybody's creative. Everybody's creative, and a lot of people say, "Oh gosh, well, I don't know, I can't draw a straight line with a ruler," and blah blah blah. There are principles, and there are processes, and there are things and tools that you can use. For me, the process of being creative, which is putting color down on a piece of paper, layering it up and coming out with something that looks realistic, that is the most incredible thing to do. That's how I started with it, loving it, because it was that mindfulness thing. It took me away from my everyday life, and anybody can do that.
Yeah,
Anybody
it's
can.
it's meditative, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah,
You're
yeah.
creating and it's meditative, so it's like a kill two birds with one stone.
Oh, it's wonderful.
Yeah. So let's go back in time
Mm.
to the fact that it was one of your first loves
Yeah,
and the fact
so
so when you were a child, did you draw a lot?
yes, yes. So I grew up on a farm, and I've always loved animals. Animals have always been, still always my love. I've got lots of animals, and I like drawing horses. And all through school, art was my favorite subject, and I wanted to go on and do art. And
Let me
in my
ask you this. I had a
yeah,
horse and I've always loved animals too. I didn't draw them, but I've heard horses are hard to draw. Is that true?
apparently horses are the hardest subject to draw. Now, if you know horses, and I'm a very feely person. So when I'm drawing, I get the feel of the animal that I'm drawing. So I can feel if an eye's not quite right. I can feel if the nostril's not quite right. I know horses. If you know horses, you know horses. You know how their bone structure works. You know how their eyes work. You know everything about them. So when you're drawing, again, it's learning these sort of principles, really. And a lot of people, when they think about drawing realistically, because I draw realistically, and a lot of people might say, oh, gosh, it looks like a photograph, and my aim is to make it look like it could just walk off the page.
Yeah.
You could sink your hands into the fur. And the main principle for drawing realism is actually not to capture all of the tiny details, but to capture the lights and darks, to capture all of those tonal values. And with horses, actually, there's an awful lot going on in a horse's face. You've got the dip above the eye, you've got that projecting cheekbone that comes down, you've got
Yes.
the nose bone, you've got some horses have got more prominent veins, you've got the jawbone, everything like that. If you can draw what you actually see, then it's not difficult, but it's about applying that, because what happens is your brain wants to take over. That's what happens. If I said to you, draw an eye, draw a human eye, you would draw a human eye. It would be sort of almond shaped. It would have eyelashes coming off it, but and it would look like a human eye, but it wouldn't look really very realistic. And actually, if we were to draw a really realistic eye together, we would be looking at not an almond shape, but we'd be looking at the shadows. We'd be looking at where the lights hit. We'd be looking at the darkness of the skin underneath the eyes and in the crease of it. So it's all about really looking at your subject and looking at the darks and lights. So actually, if you can get that, you can draw anything.
This is fascinating. So fascinating, because I talk to my students about getting out of their head and into their heart.
Mm-hmm.
And I never thought about it as it relates to drawing, that how much we do use our logic brain. Well, it needs to go like this, and it needs to go, and our perfection that gets in the way.
Oh, we don't want any perfectionism. And that's what I try to, this sounds really awful, it's what I try to beat out of my students, try to beat the perfectionism out. Because if you try and make something perfect, you're really not going to enjoy the process.
Oh,
the enjoyment doesn't come with the end product. The enjoyment comes in there. Just the disappearing, the transportation somewhere else, and the layering of color, and that's where the enjoyment comes from. And you don't want to be perfect.
Oh, this is amazing. Amazing. Because it's like so much to me, I talk about when you're trying to find purpose, when you're trying to find deeper meaning and joy in your life, it's the journey. It's the discovery. It's so parallel. It's
I know.
Crazy.
And it sounds a little bit sort of, cliche, doesn't it? Oh, it's the journey, but it really is. That's what we're here on this earth for, to enjoy every single moment of our lives.
Yeah. What just came to me is that we always associate our heart with loving somebody external to us. And it's always about romantic love. And we never think about how using our heart for everything is what really, that's where the joy is. It's romantic love is just this little piece of using your heart.
I've just been to Amsterdam this last weekend. I don't know whether you've heard of Esther Hicks.
Oh yes. I'm reading. I stopped and got interrupted with this free training I'm working on, but I'm reading or listening to The Vortex.
Right. Well, I was in Amsterdam to see Esther Hicks this last weekend.
My gosh. Oh, that's great.
I know. And honestly, mind blown. That woman is utterly incredible.
Yes. Talk about channeling and just what a gift.
Just amazing. To be with 3,000 people in an amazing venue and just feel that, oh God, it was just brilliant.
But what was the event?
It was it was just one of her events. So we had 2 days where people go up on stage and they ask a question and she answers them.
That is amazing.
But there was a brilliant question that somebody came up, and it was about, I don't think I don't give myself enough love, and I feel selfish if I do things for myself. And what came out of that conversation was, incredibly passionately, the more that you do for you, the more love you take in, the more joy you have, the bigger the capacity you have for love. So you're being selfish if you don't do stuff to make yourself feel better and to fill your heart with joy, because your heart it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. The capacity for love just gets bigger. And I love that. I absolutely love that, because I spent an awful long time putting everybody else first. And now I probably don't do enough for myself, but I do more for me. I go swimming. I spend time away from social media. I spend a lot of time with my dogs, playing with the cat. And that fills me with utter joy. And
I think, following your passion is doing something for you.
drawing is it's what I do as a job, but it's not really a job because I
I
absolutely love
know.
it.
I know. And so what I have found so fascinating about what you do is that you just started doing stuff on YouTube, right?
Well, I wanted to do art when I left school at 16, 1985, 86. I did a 2-year course at my local college, was told I wasn't good enough. And then that was it. Art was finished and I
Do you
went into,
remember, hey, not to interrupt, do you remember what you were drawing when you were told you weren't good enough?
do I remember what I was drawing?
Yeah. Like, was it something you had to turn in?
Well, yeah, I had a whole, we had to have a portfolio and I can remember some, and it wasn't, the problem was art college wanted you to be a certain person. They wanted you to do a certain kind of art. And I couldn't do that because I wasn't that person. So getting into university, Polytechnic then, but getting into there to do a fine art degree, not good enough. So I started work. And I started working for an advertising agency. I was a tea girl at the age of 17, on about £40 a month, something like that. And very quickly started to get into, I taught myself to type and I started to become a typesetter, got an opportunity to be a typesetter. Went from there, kind of carried on throughout my career and ended up being a studio manager. And this is when I worked in York. So I was a studio manager.
And a studio, what kind of studio? Art
So
studio?
it was no, well, yeah, it was a creative studio, but it was an internal studio for a big insurance company.
Oh, okay.
So
So
we
did
did
you
all
work on like ad campaigns and things like that?
more like pension products and very dry, quite boring, lots of policy wording. So, but it,
No horses on those, right?
no. But it was the time where I have my children. I've got 3 children, and it was actually it was a 9-to-5 job, and it was fine. And then I used to horse ride. I used to do a lot of dressage riding, and I had a 1-day coaching day for horse riding. And it completely changed my life. I learned about models and techniques that people use as coaches to help people with their confidence and all of that kind of stuff. And I was like, oh my goodness, never heard of any of this sort of stuff. Transactional analysis, there was all sorts of things. And I was like, my mind was blown. And I decided I wanted to do a coaching degree. So I put myself through a coaching degree. As I put myself through a coaching degree, I also ended up having my hip replaced in 2014.
Mm,
Riding
wow.
accidents, all of
Oh
that kind of
yeah.
stuff. So, I was 44 and I had a total hip
Wow.
replacement. And
I was thrown off my horse once and I thought this is not good. And
oh,
I was young enough. I bounced right back up and get back on the horse. You know, they say I was quite far from home when I did it. I was out like trail riding. But yeah, that's
mm,
scary stuff.
yeah, yeah. And that kind of, it knocks your confidence and all of that. Anyway, so I went from being the studio manager, put myself through this coaching degree, and I got a job as a coach. And I was coaching overseas in Bahrain. I was coaching senior managers, absolutely loved it. And it was whilst I was kind of doing that job, my marriage wasn't particularly happy at that point. My daughter bought me a colouring book and some pencils in for Christmas 2015. And I became, honestly, it was just love at first pick up the pencil. I just was like, oh my goodness, what is this? I'd never used colour pencils before. And it was a colouring book. So I was just colouring, and it was the colouring for mindfulness. It was quite a big sort of big fad back then, big trend. And then I started to actually draw my own pieces. And I was like, oh, I can draw, put them on Facebook. People then started asking me to draw their animals. And all of a sudden I got this full-time job. And then I was also doing these commissions on the side. And very quickly I decided, my older sister said, we think you should go full-time with your art. We think this is what you've always wanted to do and what you should do now, 30 years later. So the 1st of January 2017, I became a full-time artist.
Oh, What did it take to leave that 9 to 5?
Just took me writing a letter and saying I'm not coming back.
Did you
Obviously, I
have the
noticed
income?
it.
I mean, there's a lot of fear usually with that
There is
security.
a lot of fear. And at the point then I was married and I'd spoken to my husband and we said, you know, well, let's see how it goes. I'd put a business plan together. My brother-in-law was helping me, kind of coaching me on the business side. And I got enough booked in, you know, to be able to sort of make a go of it. And yeah, I just took that leap of faith and I have not looked back. 7 months into me becoming a full-time artist, my husband left. So that wasn't great. So I was kind of, it was a very strange time. I was devastated that he'd left, but at the same point, I was so relieved that he'd left. It wasn't a very happy marriage. But of course, I was left with the children. I wasn't going to have to sell the house, all of that kind of stuff. So that was really a really tricky time.
Mm.
Um,
Was that
and
because you had mentioned your kind of your transition or your kind of pivotal moment was 46? And I was wondering what that was because it sounds like your divorce was more recent.
so
Was it
46 was when I became creative again. That was a
okay?
massive point. Yeah, massive change in my life where I picked up creativity again.
Mm.
We divorced in 2018. And we divorced because he was getting married again and they'd already set a date. So I was like, well, I think we probably better get a divorce.
Oh
So otherwise
my
we're not going to get.
gosh.
I know. He wasn't a very well person. But anyway,
Did you
and
was that a shocker to you that that he had somebody on the side?
um no, I don't think, not really. To be honest, I was I would so when I got married, my marriage vows meant an awful lot to me, you know, for better, for worse, sickness and in health. And I'm not overly religious or anything, but that, you know,
Yeah,
I
I'm
made
the
marriage
same.
vows and
Yep.
that was that.
Did
And
you also have parents that stayed married? I did too. So I
yeah,
had no
yeah. So
divorce. Like
no,
my ex-husband and I got divorced. We split up when I was 47. So that's why we're very similar.
yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I was 47 as well, yeah, when we split up.
Yeah.
So yeah, so my parents are still together. They've been married 57 years. You know, still very happy. And he suffered dreadfully with depression for the sort of the latter part of our marriage, to the point where there was emotional and mental abuse, you know, and I was a very different person to this is me now, and I was a very different person then. So that was the relief side of stuff. That was that, because I wouldn't have walked out. I wouldn't have left.
Yes. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
we had some marriage counseling and everything, and I would not have left. I think,
You're what I call a scared settler because you know you're just well,
yeah,
and settling for the life that you don't want,
yeah.
but not even realizing the life that is possible for you.
You know, that is
Makes me
so.
so sad.
Well, it makes me sad now, you know, when
Mhm.
I look back, because it was like, this is, I would have put up with it because, you know, that we were married, and that's, anyway, he decided to go. So there was that huge relief, enormous relief, but it was terrifying because I didn't know what was going to happen to my house, whether I was going to have to sell, I didn't know. And
Mhm.
I was self-employed, so it was really difficult for me, you know, to take on a mortgage, because I'd only been self-employed for 6 months, 7 months. So it was really, really hard.
What about your
Uh,
kids? How
I know.
old was it? Were they still at home as well?
Yeah. My youngest was 13.
Yeah, that's tough. That's tough because
You
you
know,
know that's what
so
moms want to do. They want to keep the family together.
I know. And the
And so you
way
feel like, oh my gosh, I failed them.
know,
But I
I
will
know.
say, and this is how I felt because I was the one who left. I was the one who made the decision to leave because
Mm,
after 3 years of knowing I needed to and not doing it, but we're both so much happier.
yeah,
And you know, I was like, I know he'll be happy. I know
yeah,
he's not happy now. And so for people who are listening that are in a place where they know it's probably a crappy marriage and they're staying because of their vows, or they're staying because they're their kids, and like it's okay to leave because
Yeah.
everybody's going to benefit by
Yeah.
the leaving.
Yeah. And the thing is, it's a very short space of time that it feels horrific. It feels huge. It feels like the whole world is going to come down on you and you're not going to be able to cope. But it's a very, very, very small period of time.
Yeah. Yeah, this is one of the things I talk about is that we think the future that we can see is based on our past experiences.
Yeah.
And what we've seen and what we've learned, and we tend to catastrophize. Like it's like we've never seen our life turn out good like it could be, right?
Yeah.
Because it's been
Yeah.
shitty for so long. And so that's where we think it's going to head. And so the fact that we can't see and can't even contemplate
Mm.
how amazing it could be. Like, I'm sure you never imagined in a million years the life you have
No,
now.
no, not at all. Not at all. And I mean, I guess I started teaching. So at the beginning, I was just a commissioned artist, and I started teaching at the back end of 2018. I had this, it was so weird. This person messaged me on Facebook, and it's a lady called Vicky, and she was like, "Hi, Bonnie, you don't know me, but I want you to come down to London and teach a colored pencil class." And I responded, I was like, "Oh, hi, Vicky, nice to meet you. No, I'm not teaching. It's not something that I'm doing at the moment, but thanks for asking." And then she came back, she went, no, I've got the venue, I've got it all sorted. These are the dates we want you to come. I'll hope you get all of the people. And she was so insistent. And I was like, this is really weird. Anyway, I ended up going in the November of the 2018, and I ran this 2-day workshop. And she's been my best friend ever since, and she's now my community manager of my Facebook thing, and we've been to South Africa and she's amazing.
Oh, that's
She's an amazing
awesome.
woman. But she got me into the
Yes, but it's so funny. I was thinking about
yeah.
your community manager, what you were saying, and I was like, you probably needed in your life somebody who was a little pushy. They're
Yes.
like pushing you
Yeah.
and your business and all that.
Yeah, and she's a huge support, an amazing woman, and got me into that teaching space. And then beginning of 2019, I decided to start teaching online. Don't know whether you've heard of Patreon. A lot of artists use Patreon. It's a third-party platform. You put your content on there, and then people come and they'll pay a nominal amount to be able to watch your videos. So I started my Patreon in 2019, thinking I could do with sort of like a couple of £100 extra a month. Put some tutorials up there, see what happens. And my first month, I got so many new members that I was up to 2,000 a month. And then it just kept on going up and up and up until I was earning something crazy like 25,000 a month, which was ludicrous.
Wonder what your ex says now.
honestly, and it was just like it was crazy. So that that was a brilliant way to get into that online stuff. And then of course 2020 happened, and I kind of moved stuff online anyway, so it was sort of like nothing really changed for me. I love being at home. I loved having my children at home. Sadly, in the May, my husband's depression just got too much for him, and he actually took his own life in the May of 2020, which was incredibly sad.
For your kids,
I mean, it was
yeah.
just devastating for us. I mean, it was just sadly, I want to say it was out of the blue, but it wasn't. It wasn't.
So a year ago?
2020, so 3 years ago.
Oh, right after the pandemic. Yeah.
Right slap bang in the middle.
Yeah.
So that and
That's what I meant. Yeah, right after it started. Yeah.
Yeah. So at the time, I kind of was held it all in. I was I'm this strong woman. I can cope with everything. Everything's fine. And then just kept on going. Obviously, caring for my children, very difficult to get help and stuff, obviously during the pandemic and everything. But 2021, I was kind of looking to write a book. I wanted to write a couple of books, and I was introduced to this amazing author coach, and on our first session, and it was via Zoom like this, and we were just chatting, and she was asking me about me and everything, and very intuitive lady, and she'd asked me a question. I can't remember what it was, and I'd made a face. I think I'd raised my eyebrows or something, and she went, "Oh, hang on, let's just rewind a little bit. Talk to me about, you've made a funny face, blah blah blah." And all of the last 9 years, the sadness of my marriage, the abuse, the death of my ex-husband, everything came out. I'm laughing about it. It wasn't funny at all, but everything came out in that hour session. I had no handkerchiefs, no tissues, no nothing. I was an absolute hot mess. I had like snot running down I was just a mess, because everything just came out. I'd been holding it in and holding it in, and she allowed me to talk about it. And I found it really, really hard to talk about some of the stuff that had happened.
How did it get to the point where the kind of dam broke? Was it something that she said, a question she asked?
It was she'd seen something in my face, and she's like, well, you know, you've just made a funny face there. Just talk to me about it.
Oh,
And then
wow.
it
That was
just
the
all,
trigger.
yeah. Then it just all came out. And I couldn't, when it doesn't happen now because I've done so much work with
Yeah.
this amazing woman.
It sounds like it was just right under the surface, because most people,
I
you have to
couldn't
dig a
talk.
little. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think because it had been relatively new. I mean, it wasn't years and years and years. It was like about 8 or 9 years. And I had this lump, this physical lump in my throat. And when I tried to talk about things, it wouldn't let me talk. My voice it just disappeared. And I'd start coughing, and it would feel like I've got, you know, something in my throat that just wouldn't. And it wasn't weird. It's my body trying to protect me and look after me. And we did a lot of work in, you know, kind of going back, setting boundaries. I had no boundaries. You know, people took advantage of me. He took advantage of me. I forgive myself for allowing people to take advantage of me, but I had no set boundaries. I just wanted to please everybody, and I just wanted to be everybody's friend. And so I had no boundaries in place. So people took advantage, and she taught me to, you know, set some really good, solid boundaries. And she still helps me with that. And we worked on this lump. She also is an NLP practitioner, and we worked on physically talking to the lump. It sounds really weird, but we were talking to the lump, and we were trying to get it to leave. And probably after about 6 months of you know, a session every couple of weeks, I was able to talk about stuff. I was able to tell the lump that it didn't need to help me anymore. Your listeners are probably going, "Oh my God, this woman's crazy."
No, we talk about stuff. I've had mediums on my show, and yeah.
Honestly. And then it got to the point where I could talk about it without, you know, breaking down, without not being able to talk. And it's been the best thing to have happened to me. And also at that point, that's when I started to think about my own platform, the Bonny Snowdon Academy. And we were able to do some NLP work where we go forwards. I put myself in the position of somebody who was, you know, a
Future
really
pace. Yeah.
successful, really successful, you know, art business owner, you know, what it would feel like, how it would. And I had a couple of really weird experiences where, and I haven't had them since, and I really need to get that back again. But it was midnight one night. I'd taken the dogs out, you know, before we went to bed. And I don't know, I was feeling particularly amazing and happy. And it was like I had this like aura. Just was like, it was almost like somebody gone, ah, like that. And I was just like, oh my God. And the weirdest thing, my little sister, who had she kind of removed herself from the family because she'd had all sorts of troubles with her children and everything. she'd had a very similar experience because she'd just found Esther Hicks and she'd started meditating. And my older sister had told my younger sister, oh, Bonnie's had this blah, blah, blah. And then next minute, Heidi's ringing me up and she's going, oh my God, I hear you've had this experience. And I was like, oh yeah, you know, and we're back together, we're best buddies. And she came to Amsterdam with me last weekend. And it's the most amazing thing. You know, the fact that we're both working on us, on ourselves, on how we behave, on how we react to, you know, the external world, how we're doing things to make ourselves happy. It's wonderful. She's 47 now, but it's just wonderful. It's just, you know, absolutely wonderful. So, you know, and as much as I've led there's been some really awful things happen, and it's been incredibly sad, and I see them as an experience that's happened to me, and not necessarily my story. You know, my story is that one of finding creativity again, absolutely loving it, and then just wanting to share everything, which I'm doing, and getting other people to
I mean, you're older and wiser. I feel very strongly that the path we walk is meant to, as we get to a certain point in our path, to have that experience to help other people. Like we have that wisdom. It's like nothing we should be critical of ourselves for. It's now, you know, it's know better, do better. And as long as you're aware, you know, it's awareness. We go blind through life, and we're blind through life, and then a lot of inner critic stuff happening, self-criticism, and that you can't help people when you're in that place. You have to look at your past as, what am I to learn from this? And then how can I use this to help other people? Yeah. I think that's the key.
I mean, I could have taken a different route. I could have taken a route of feeling really sorry for myself, and, you know, and rightly so. I should have felt really sorry for myself. You know, there's no reason why I shouldn't, because I had a crappy time. But I decided that I didn't want that to be who I was. You know, and finding the art, I think the creativity, it just completely took over. And it wasn't, there was never a point where it was, oh, this isn't going to work. You know, there was that unwavering belief that no, this is going to work. This is, you know, we're going to do this, and it's going to work, and it's going to be fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know.
Well, you know what I think that lump was? Because I've learned about the throat chakra, because I have my own battles with it. But yeah, it's, now you're truly in your most authentic place, and you're that was a sign that you were avoiding that, or you weren't presenting as truly Bonny.
Yeah. And isn't it amazing that our bodies do this? Isn't it amazing that our bodies
it's like signs. They're like all over the place, but we don't see them because we don't know about them.
I know,
and even when we do, I recently had a coaching session, and I was holding my throat, and we were talking about something like this major, like, aha I had at a recent retreat. And he was like, why are you holding your throat? And I was like, oh, I didn't even know I was holding my throat. And we're on Zoom there. You'd think, you know, I'd be paying attention. And, you know, it's, I think, you know, there's so much, even if you're aware of, you know, I know that lump is probably Bonny, not really being Bonny, but then here I am, like, going, oh, on my throat. So that's why, like, coaching is so important. And
oh gosh, do you know, it really is. And I had a session yesterday, morning, and I poor Susie, I'd not spoken to her for a couple of weeks, and I'd had a couple of things happen. So I've had quite a lot of PR done, because I'm supporting a charity, a domestic abuse charity, which I feel incredibly strongly about. It's in York. And we'd had some PR done about it. And I've had a couple of things where people have been very angry that I've spoken up about being mentally abused, which I find really peculiar, but people have their own issues and all of that kind of stuff. And I get that. I can't understand, but I can, you know, anyway. So yeah, so I've had a couple of things that happened that were particularly nasty, and I thought I got over it. I thought I wasn't bothered by it. Some comments and stuff. And so I'm there sitting with poor Susie, and she gets the full it's like, how this happened, and how dare people, I've spent so long trying to get through what I've got through. I've spent, I've tried so hard to come to terms with what happened and talk about it. And then somebody's telling me I can't talk about it, and how disgusting that I'm talking about it. And that it made me really angry, because that's why people don't get help, because they feel they're not allowed to talk about stuff. If you've been physically abused or mentally abused, you almost feel embarrassed about it, so you don't talk up about it. And you need people to speak about it. You need people to say, it's happened to me, and there are things that you can do, and this charity is amazing, and my door's always open. If you want to speak to somebody, I'm always here. That's really important. And to have gone through all of that work, to have had the courage to talk about it, and then be told what a terrible human being you are.
You know what? Well, there's a couple of things that come up when you are out there in the world, as you are online. It just comes with
I know.
the game, right?
Yeah.
I follow people that are on like the competition reality shows. I'm a big fan of the competition reality shows, and people are so mean, and they don't even know them. They're watching an edited program, and they have no idea what they're really like. So I just want to say that. But what I want to say as well is your ex-husband, maybe some of that is because he's passed.
Yeah.
But I know that your ex-husband would want you to talk about it, because he is a beautiful soul, and he was just caught up in his ego, in his
Yeah. Well,
humanness.
his problems, his depression,
Yeah. Yeah. And we inside, deep inside, were that what you were saying in the beginning, pure love,
Yeah.
pure love and acceptance and no judgment. And those people are stuck in their humanness, judging you.
I
And
know. And
yeah,
it's when you have interviews with the press, they always are looking for that
yeah,
clickbait, that but
sure.
you'd spend like an hour talking to somebody, and you tell them all of this lovely stuff, how we met and all of that. They just don't put any of that in. It's just like, oh, husband dies, blah blah blah, and it's like,
That
oh.
doesn't get the views.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But so I had this session with Susie, and I was like, oh my God, I'm so angry. And I really wanted to put something on social media. And she said, right, okay, let's talk this through. Do you want to put something on social media? Because it's National Mental Health Awareness Week this week. She said, go ahead, think about what. She said, is there another way that could you put something else on social media? But and anyway, I kind of came round to the fact that I can deal with that side of things privately. That's something I can deal with Susie. On my social media, actually what I did was I wrote a post about, how do you want to show up? How do you want to show up in the world?
Yeah. Because the people that need to hear your message are going to hear it, and it's going to matter to them.
Yeah.
I have a quick story that I want to share with you, and this goes back to like your husband would be happy for you. So my dad died, and my mom has been like, she just checked out. This is several years ago. She's pretty much an invalid in an assisted living home, but she still knows things. She knows me. She remembers my dad. And so I wanted to connect her with him. And so I hired a medium, and we did a session. And the crazy thing is, I wanted to connect my mom and my dad, but at the beginning of the session, she said, well, I let anybody come in who wants to come in, if somebody else wants to talk to your mom, your Diane is my mom's name, besides Don, my dad, and her mother wants to talk to her. I'm going to get chills. Might even like cry. But my grandmother was an alcoholic, and she was really mean. And my mom suffered a lot. And although I would say of the three girls, my mom probably got the least brunt of it, because her alcoholism escalated after my mom was a little older. And yeah, they had a relationship when my grandmother died, but she did some mean things to my mother and her sisters. Like one of her sisters she didn't speak to for 7 years, and she would always do things like that. She comes from a lot of dysfunction, to give her some benefit of the doubt. But alcoholism has a way of like repeating itself generation after generation. But she wanted to talk to my mother, and it was really an interesting way this medium navigated it, because my dad said, I'll let her talk first. It was like crazy. But she said, I want you to know I love you, and I'm so sorry. I want you to know I've always loved you. And it was just like so powerful to me to hear that my grandmother is happy and at peace, and is this beautiful soul inside. It reminded me that we're all like that.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
somebody can be like that, and that, because I had that experience, it's why I thought that's your
Yeah.
ex-husband. He learned
Yeah.
from this life, and
Yes.
his soul's going to come back and be a better,
Yeah.
that'll be within him. Yeah.
Yeah. And the more that I follow and I listen to Esther Abraham Hicks, the more that is my belief. That is how I see things.
Yeah.
We talk about God and religion and everything, and I think for me that exists in us. When we get to the point where we are happy with who we are, we fill our lives with bliss and joy. That's the whole, that's where you get your happiness from.
Yeah.
But how can you put and I think that's why, not talking about religion or anything, but that's why we have to put a label on it, a name on it. We have to call it something, because we're human, and we have to have something that's tangible. But I do believe that we've all got something in our souls,
Mm-hmm.
And once we're doing what we're supposed to be doing, and we're living our best lives, and our best lives don't have to be lives full of, materialistic things. It's about being able to go out and be present and enjoy the, what's surrounding us, and choose I choose not to listen to the news. It's not because I'm putting my head in the sand and ignoring everything that's going on. I choose to live in a world that I see here. I go out of my back door, I see fields, I've got my animals, I've got my children, I've got amazing people around me. That's what the world that I choose to be in.
Yeah.
And that makes
control
me
the
really
controllable too, because there's so little we can do by just listening to the news.
Well, we can't, and all it does is it fills us with this just sadness.
Yeah, that's sad. That's very sad. So interesting. Our conversation I never thought would lead here, but it's been so great. I want to go back to the vortex, because what that book has taught me, which is so cool, and it's related to this, is that our souls are here to expand, and in a way that they can't do because they're not human, and so they can't touch, see, feel in the way that like we can with our human body. And so if we're not here to learn these lessons in this life and expand, and when we stay shrunk and not exploring and in our comfort zone, afraid to like take chances, we're not expanding.
No.
So
Yeah,
you're a great example of expansion.
Yeah. Well, I've got a lovely life,
Mhm.
I've
Yeah.
got a little house in a village, and I've got my dogs, and I've got my children, I've got my brothers and sisters, my mum and dad, and I've got all my amazing community, and it's wonderful.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Mm,
So what would
yeah.
you like to leave? So if somebody is listening and they are feeling like, gee, Bonnie's very lucky. I wish I could have some of what Bonnie has. So what would you tell them? What would be your best advice?
I would say, I don't think luck exists. I think we make our own luck. I would say start by looking at yourself, looking at what makes you happy, and do something that makes you happy every single day. Whether that's a walk, a swim, drawing, make time for you, and make it a priority. Because as soon as you start having that, oh God, this is nice. Oh gosh, I feel lovely. You're going to want more of it. And the more you feel like that, the lovelier your life will be.
Yes. Yes. And then luck will come, right? Isn't it funny
Well,
how the more positive you are, the more happy
It's
you
all
are?
opportunities. Yeah.
Yeah.
Opportunity comes knocking, and if you're open to it, you hear the knock. If you're
Yeah.
not, if you're closed and you're then you don't hear it.
Yeah.
Picking up on those opportunities and making opportunities for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. I love
Yeah.
that. I'm so glad we met.
Oh, me too. I think it's been lovely. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Could chat
Thanks for
forever.
sharing your story.
My
And
pleasure.
I am jealous of you going to see Esther Hicks. I'm going to have to look her up and see when she's going to come to North America.
Oh, well, she's there. She does all sorts.
Yeah.
Honestly, I'm gonna
I
book
didn't
it
even
down
think
for next
about it
year.
because I just thought, oh, she's so old. She's been
Yes,
around for a while.
she is. But I tell you what, she stood both days for 3 hours. She was standing up.
How old is she?
Yeah, she was 70 something, I think.
Okay. Oh, she's still
She
young.
looks
Yeah. Yeah.
amazing.
And I think
Oh,
too, when you're living from this passionate place,
yeah,
like it gives you the energy that isn't there
definitely.
when you're like not happy. It's when you're not
No,
happy, it's like, oh, it's a big
yeah,
load, big load.
yeah,
All
yeah.
right. Thanks so
Oh,
much.
thank you so much, Laurie. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you.
Okay. Bye.
Okay, bye.
Thank you so much for tuning into the Living Your Spark Second Half podcast. If you'd like to watch my guest interviews, you can find the video version of this podcast on my Not Your Average Grandma YouTube channel. Also, you can check out what I have going on at the moment by going to my website at notyouraveragegrandma.com or find me on Instagram or Facebook at Not Your Average Grandma. If you like this episode, please mention it to a friend, and don't forget to leave a review so I know the topics you like best and can bring you more of that content in upcoming episodes. Last but not least, remember to always listen to that inner voice that will never steer you wrong and make living from the most sparked place possible your biggest priority. When we do that, we make the world a better place.